I'm Clever Ghoul, but you can call me Nikki. Welcome back to the channel. It's finally fall. The leaves are changing, the veil between worlds is thinning, you can feel a chill in the air. Just kidding. Where I live, September is actually one of the hottest times of year, and I really want to celebrate Halloween while also not dying of heat stroke. So this week, I'm making a super cute Halloween dress using this Argyle Halloween print from Rifle Paper Co. When I saw it, I just knew I had to turn it into a cute dress to wear during fall outings, so that's what we're doing this week. With that being said, let's get into it. For materials, you'll need the following. The pattern from Pattern Franz, I will link below. Fabric. The pattern calls for 2.35 yards of a lightweight woven fabric, so I got 2.5 yards of this adorable Halloween Argyle that I found at my local fabric store. Tailor chalk. And of course, all of the standard items you'll need to sew. A machine, pins or clips, fabric scissors, or a rotary cutter and mat, etc. Also, for assembling the pattern, you will need some tape. As with any sewing project, before you start, make sure to wash, dry, and even iron your fabric. First, you're going to print the pattern according to the directions. I chose letter size, and then I laid it down and taped it together before cutting it out. Next, pin your pattern pieces to your fabric according to the directions. You will need to cut on the fold, so I recommend taking your time to really make sure the fabric is flat and folded in half neatly. I decided to break this up into groups, first focusing on cutting what would be the front pieces for the top and bottom. If you want to really match up the pattern, you'll have to do math and may need to buy a little extra fabric. This isn't something I'm skilled at yet, so I just tried to cut where I thought it would still look nice when the pieces were sewn together. I went extremely slowly here, making sure I didn't waste any fabric and making sure everything was cut out as cleanly as possible. Then I repeated that process with the back pieces for the top and bottom. Lastly, I cut out the 4 rectangular pieces that would be used for the ties. To make sure I didn't get confused in the beginning, I made labels for the pieces with masking tape and a Sharpie. From there, I carefully transferred the darts onto the wrong side of the fabric with tailor's chalk. Then I folded the fabric, right sides together along the center of the dart, and pinned it before sewing from the wide end of the dart towards the apex. I pressed the darts down and made sure they were symmetrical. To attach the front and back of the top together, I pinned them at the shoulders, right sides together, and then sewed along the shoulder seam, and once finished, pressed the shoulder seam toward the back. Next, you're going to gather the bottom pieces at the top edge. I recommend using strong thread here. Sew basting stitches about 3/16 of an inch from the top, and make sure to leave a long bit of excess threads at the end. Then hold the bobbin threads and pull gently to create gathers. Slide the fabric along the threads to adjust the gathers. I recommend lining this up with the bottom of your top so you can adjust the amount of gathers you will need, and then pin or clip at the top so nothing moves too much in the next steps. Place those front and back pieces right sides together and pin securely at seams. Stitch from underarm to hem, starting at the notch in the arm and using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once that's done, you'll notice the instructions show the top of the bodice as being gathered, but that's not actually correct. So ignore that and move on to pinning the front of the bodice to the front of the skirt and the back bodice to the back of the skirt, right sides together. Pin really well here and aim to keep your gathers evenly distributed. Then stitch just below the basting line, locking in your gathers on the front and back pieces. Remove any basting stitches if they're visible and press the seam allowance up towards the bust. Before doing this, I actually decided to add a zigzag stitch here above the basting line just to make sure nothing unraveled. Next, fold in the raw edges on the armholes to the inside at about 3/16 of an inch, pin it and press it. Then remove the pins and fold it again that same amount to enclose the raw edges, pin, press, and top stitch as close to the inner folded edge as possible. You're going to repeat this process around the neckline. I made a mistake here as I've never sewn a square neckline, and because of that, my dress has slight folds at the corners. I don't really mind this, and I've since learned how to do it properly, but I really recommend Googling how to do this as the provided directions offer no help and simply say to take extra care, but no actual step-by-step instruction. Next, you're going to make the ties. The directions are really clear here. I will say that I was getting tired as I did this and made some mistakes, so I stopped, and then later went back in and seam ripped out the mistakes and re-sewed. When the ties are done, place them where the bodice meets the skirt on the front and back armholes on each side. There's no measurement provided here, so I winged it and lined up the ties so they were just over the existing seam, and then sewed them so they'd be right on top of the existing stitching. Lastly, hem the dress. First, fold up the bottom edge by 1 inch, pin and press it. Then fold it at the same distance again, pin, press, and sew close to the folded edge to keep the hem consistent. I didn't realize there was going to be that second fold there, which is why you see the zigzag stitch on the bottom of the hem. I wanted to lock it in before doing this, but you don't have to do that. From there, give it a good press, and you're all done, which means it's time for the reveal. Here it is. Overall, I'm so happy with this dress and I think it came out really cute. I love how lightweight it is and it's so fun to style. I actually loved it so much that I made a second one right after finishing this. And yes, I figured out the neckline for that. Speaking of, I do have a few notes about this pattern. I did have to stop and do some converting here because it was written in metric, which really isn't a big deal at all, but it's something to just be aware of. And I was confused when the bodice was illustrated as gathered in one part of the instructions and then later shown as flat, and in the finished photo shown as flat. That was a little confusing. And I do really think that the neckline portion needs to be explained better than it is, especially for less experienced sewists, or people like me who are getting back into sewing after taking a really long break from it and need a bit of a refresher. But again, I really love how this turned out, and I love this Halloween argyle fabric. It's much more cutesy than my regular style, but I think that's perfect for Halloween. Do you have any fun Halloween-based outfits at home? I would love to hear about them, so let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!